Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Uncle Mike's Awesome Outdoors. Today I am attempting to tan an elk hide from an elk that I shot during this hunting season. And I just wanted to show you a couple of the things I'm doing to take care of this hide. So the first step obviously is to skin the animal, but the second step is perhaps the most difficult, but also one of the most important, and that is to take all the flesh off of the hide. Every last tiny stitch of flesh or membrane has to come off the hide. Usually home tanners will use what's called a fleshing knife, and I'll show you that in just a minute. It's a lot more difficult to get the flesh off with that, but I read on the internet that a pressure washer with at least 2000 psi will have enough pressure to just jet the flesh off, and so that's what we're doing right now. So you can see this is the hide. I'm almost done. The goal is to have the hide white like this. You can see there's flesh, there's some old blood, there's these membranes on here. All this stuff has to come off. So what I've been doing is I've been using the pressure wash gun, and I'm starting at the edge and I'm blowing from the center of the hide outward toward the edge, and I'll do about a 2-inch strip, and then I'll move back, and I'll do another 2-inch strip, and then I'll move back. I found that this works the best because then the edges of the hide don't fold over. Now, this technique isn't without its problems. Number one, you're going to get drenched. So I've put on my rain gear, which is helping somewhat. But perhaps the biggest problem is your yard will be covered with bits of flesh. It splashes everywhere. I mean, if you look here, it's all over my concrete. It's all over this tree. It has splashed all the way over to that fence, and there's pieces on the fence. So if you have dogs, you may want to kennel them. If you don't care that they eat a bunch of it, then just let them roam free. They'll help you clean it up. Maybe throw the biggest chunks away. I have a bucket right here that I'm throwing the biggest pieces in so the dogs don't choke on it. Anyway, check this out and you'll see how this is done. Alright, the hide is now flesh free and clean. That red is just discoloration in the skin. I checked. And that looks pretty good. I've been dumping salt on it. And just salt here. I'm going to use canning and pickling salt. I've read that you don't want salt with iodine in it, so this is what I'm using because it is just salt. So I'm going to cover this with about 8 pounds of salt, and then I'm going to fold it in half, skin to skin. I'm going to roll it up and stick it in a bucket for 24 hours. Then we're going to fold it skin to skin. Okay, so I rolled up the hide in salt, left it overnight, and then this morning I came out and I laid the hide flat. I scraped all the old salt off it and I put a whole new layer of salt on it. You can see how thick it's on there. I forgot to film part of this next step, but I left that salt on those hides for 24 hours, and then I scraped the wet saturated salt off with a small putty knife, and then I resalted it, rolled it back up, let that sit for another 24 hours, after which I mixed up a solution for a brine. What I did is I mixed up 3 ounces of citric acid and 1 pound of salt. I mixed that quantity in each gallon of water, and then I submerged the hide in a solution of that water, about 8 gallons worth. And as you can see, it's been sitting in this solution now for about 3 days. So it's just sitting in there. It's called a brine, or it's called pickling the hide. So I've let it pickle for 3 days. Actually, sorry, it's been 4 days. And it's been in there pickling, and I've checked the pH every single day with, if I can get it out here, with this little pH test kit. And every day I would rip off a little strip of this paper and dip it in the pickling brine. And I would check to make sure that I was at 2.0 or less on the pH scale. You can see right there. Any higher pH than that, and you risk the hair falling out. You also risk bacteria getting in there and starting to rot your hide. So I kept it in that solution for days, and then we'll move on to the next step. I pulled the hide out of the brine, or the pickle, and then I rinsed it. I put some Dawn dish soap on there and some water, and I slushed it around, and I washed it and rinsed it 3 times. And now it is strung across this board, and I'm just letting it drip dry a little bit. Once it's damp but not dripping, I'm going to put this hide tanning formula on here according to the instructions. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a sharp knife and I'm poking little holes like that, just big enough to get my rope into. And this is just cheap clothesline rope from Walmart. So I've been poking these little holes all the way around the edges. See, I still have to add a couple right there. So anyway, I'll be tensioning and retensioning these as I go. As the thing stretches out, it kind of changes direction. So let's keep working on this. All right, so I just poured the tanning solution, dribbled it all over the hide, and I've been just painting it in like this. So that's done. You can see it has a little bit of color to it now. Maybe that's hard to pick up in the camera. I'm just going to leave that now. Let's see here. The instructions say, it says I'm supposed to fold the skin flesh side onto itself and let it dry. But since I've tensioned the skin on this rack, I am not taking it off. That was kind of a lot of work. So I'm going to let this dry as it is. And then once that's dry, I'll come out and I'll start to work the hide to make it soft. So as the hide dries, it's going to stiffen up. It'll stiffen up super hard. It'll become like a board if you don't stretch and pull and break up the fibers that are in the leather. So A lot of people will take the hide and they'll wrap it around a wood post and run that hide along the wood post on the sharp edge, but I want to leave it hung up. So I'm going to use the edge of this 2x4 and I'm going to rub it all over the hide to try to break up the fibers and stretch it as it's drying. And I'll do this about once or twice every 12 or 15 hours. So here's our hide right there. And you'll see I've got this board and I'm going to just rub it really hard around the whole thing. And what that's doing is that's bending the leather at the point where the board touches it. So I'm going to really aggressively do this. I want to get into all the nooks and crannies. I'm pushing on this really hard. It's kind of a lot of work. But you can see the hide gets more flexible in the spots where you've gone over it with the board edge. And I'll do this repeatedly as it dries to keep it flexible. And I'll go in different directions. Remember, you're using the corner, not the flat edge. So the hide is pretty well dried now, and I've worked over the whole thing with the rubbing stick. It's looking pretty good here. So the next step is to sand the hide down, which does a couple of things. It takes off all the weird little, all these little strange grainy bits. You know, all these leftover pieces. Sanding will take that off and it will give it this nice, beautiful suede appearance. So, a lot of people have used palm sanders, but I'm going to go ahead and just use an angle grinder with a flap disc on it. This works way faster, it's easier, and you just need a little bit of control with your grip and how you use it. You got to use a light touch so you don't burn through. So check this out. This takes no time at all, and soon you're left with a nice, soft, suede backing to your rug. So the hide is now dry. I've softened it up with the board and the pliers. You can see that it's pretty supple. It bends easily. I think we're about done. I combed the hair out a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and take it off the ropes, and I'm going to take it in the house, and we'll probably trim it up on the floor. Hey guys, here's the final product. I've got this setting on the floor as a rug. I'm not going to leave it here. I'm going to put it on the couch maybe. But it turned out great, I think. It's pretty flexible, pretty supple here. It's not the softest leather I've ever seen, but for what I had to work with, I think it turned out pretty darn good. You can see everything moves easily. So, totally worth the time. Not a whole lot of cost involved with this, so I would recommend next time you are out hunting and you get an animal, don't waste the hide. With just a little investment in money and a lot of investment in time, you can make yourself a pretty darn good rug or wall hanging. So, Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.